Blessed Spirit of my life, give me strength through stress and strife. Help me live with dignity. Let me know serenity. Fill me with a vision. Clear my mind of fear and confusion. When my thoughts go restlessly, let peace find a home in me. Spirit of great mystery, hear the still small voice in me. Help me live my wordless creed as I comfort those in need. Fill me with compassion, be the source of my intuition. Then when life is done for me, let love be my legacy.
And a warm welcome to Emerson Unitarian Universalist Congregation. My name is James Poteet. I'm a new member of the worship team as well as the chairperson for the LGBTQ+ Welcoming and Justice Committee. I'd like to offer a special welcome to those of you joining us for the first time and to those who are returning after an absence, long or short. May you be nourished in heart and mind by our worship today. Here at Emerson, we embrace a wide variety of theological and spiritual beliefs, and we honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person. You are welcome here. Following the service, there will be activities for children, youth, and adults. Don't miss these opportunities to explore meaningful topics and to connect with members of the community. You will find a complete list of these activities in the order of service, which is available at our website, emersonuu.org. And while there, you can sign up for the Notebook, which is our weekly email newsletter. Again, the web address is emersonuu.org. Each Sunday, we begin the service by lighting the chalice. We prepare ourselves for worship by focusing our minds and redirecting our awareness. Today's chalice lighting words come from Soul Matters. What is it about this flame that opens our ears, opens our hearts? Come back to your center, it calls. Return to that quiet space we long for and that longs for us. From this stillness, always a voice arises if we let it. So come, friends, let us listen once again. Let us find that flame inside that guides us back home. And now, in the spirit of community, I invite you to greet those in your home and in our chat space. And let us remember that we need not think alike to love alike.
Good morning, friends. Good morning, and welcome to this new day. My name is Reverend Deborah Bennett, and as always, it is a joy and a delight to be with you this morning, although virtually, although we have some wonderful people in our attendance this morning. So I want to say good morning to everybody. Thank you all for coming. Good morning to our AV team up there. I always point up. It is to the heavens, but it is also to our AV booth, who are heavenly creatures up there. Good morning, Bruce, as well. How are you this morning, Bruce? You're looking quite dapper this morning. I like this thing you're rocking. And you have a pelican next to you, Bruce. What's up with that?
We share an attribute.
That's awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. I know it's been challenging times in the world today, and I really invite you to take this time, to take our worship time, our sanctuary time, and to create a sanctuary for yourself. So perhaps just being a little bit more conscious of the space around you, maybe calling people in, maybe putting down devices that want to draw your attention. Bruce, I saw you had your iPad, your phone, and a computer over there. Could you put those aside, please? You have to have. But really creating this space. It's easy for one day to feel like the next lately, doesn't it? That's like we check our emails, we check our tests, we check our computers, we read the news, we listen to the news. There's so much going on with work and with school and so much time on the internet. It's really nice to be able to have a moment to step back, create some sanctuary space, to breathe, relax. So I invite you to let this worship service really be a time set aside this week for you and your family. This month we hold the theme of deep listening. And today we're going to begin that conversation with exploring about the deep listening that we do within. Now, some people call this listening to the voice of God. Other people call it listening to spirit or soul. Some people just say it's this voice of their truest self. I really love the term, the still small voice. In today's chaotic, often very loud world, listening deeply is not always easy. So the good news is, by tuning into the service, you did one of the first hard steps in doing that, which is creating some time and space. So thank you for doing that. And I don't know about you, but I am often impressed with how attuned to their inner voice it seems that animals often are. Isn't it true? So it's appropriate today that in addition to exploring deep listening for ourselves, we're going to pause and we're going to honor the Catholic patron saint of animals, St. Francis of Assisi. Today in the Roman Catholic tradition is the Feast of St. Francis. He lived from 1182 to 1226, and he was a monk who founded the contemporary order of the Franciscans, and he was known for his vow of poverty and his special connection to animals, and he became the patron saint of both the environment and of animals because of his love for the creatures. He was said to have preached often to the birds. And I think we can each learn so much about the animals in our presence, how still they are. I love watching my cat when he just sits and doesn't seem to have a care in the world and just is really present with himself. So I'm going to invite us to take a moment to honor St. Francis and the animals with a prayer of thanksgiving. So if at home you have either a live animal you want to go gather, or a photo, or I think everyone around here's got somebody. I don't know if we can see we've got birds and bunnies and all kinds of things. I'm going to light our ritual altar, where we have a statue of St. Francis, and then I'm going to offer a prayer. So take a moment now and gather up your animals or pictures of your animals, or take a moment to look outside and see if you can find a flying or furry or otherwise animaled friend. And as you hold your animal friend or you gaze at your picture, I invite you to share in this prayer of thanksgiving. Voice still and small, deep inside us all. Let us feel our connection this day across all of creation. Let us not see the ways we are separate, but the ways that we are unified by the voice of love, by the sounds of our longing for connection, and by the blessing to be in each other's company. We offer a prayer of thanksgiving for the opportunity to love and be loved by these humble animal friends, whether furred or skinned or scaled or shelled or winged. May we awaken now to recognize we are all part of the vast web of creation, and that inside each one of us is a still small voice calling us onward together. Blessed be, and blessings to your beloved animal friends this morning. A special hug from my kitty, Zeus, and my grandkitty, Sasha, and my grandpuppy, Sadie. And now let's join together in our opening hymn and awaken our senses. Thank you to our hymn singers this morning, Dave Schimmel and Wynn Scow.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Wake now, my risen, reach out to the new. Join with each pilgrim who quests for the true. Honor the beauty and wisdom of time. Suffer thy limit and praise the sublime. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to
Love is the dawn.
end.
My name is Jillian Scow, and I have a wisdom story for all ages. This story comes, excuse me. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Jillian Scow, and I have a wisdom story for all ages. This story comes from the Aboriginal peoples of Central Australia. And long time ago, it is said that the Great Spirit spoke directly to human beings. People would gather at dawn around the great gum tree, and the Great Spirit would speak to them, would teach them, would explain things they could not see, and the people would try to understand. But over time, fewer and fewer people gathered at dawn at the great gum tree, maybe because it was too busy, maybe because it was too early, but for one reason or another, they fell away, and the Great Spirit knew that it was time for a different way to communicate with people. And so a messenger was sent to Earth. The messenger was called Narundari, and Narundari taught the people and lived among them. People liked this arrangement, and enjoyed learning and understanding from Narundari, but a few still remembered the old days when the Great Spirit had spoken at the gum tree, and they missed hearing the voice of the Great Spirit. So they went to Narundari and asked, wasn't there a way the Great Spirit could speak again? And for a long time, Narundari had no answer to this plea, but eventually gathered the people and spoke and said, the Great Spirit will send a sign to the great gum tree in the dark of night. And so the people gathered in the dark and waited and listened in hope, in expectation, and a little bit of uncertainty. And they waited, and they watched, and they looked, and all of a sudden, a great fire came down from the heavens and split the gum tree with a flash of light. And then the gum tree closed and was right exactly as it had been before. People sat back in awe and wonder and looked at each other and wondered what had happened. Narundari stood up and spoke. You see, the tongue of the Great Spirit is in everything. And you can hear the voice of the Great Spirit in everything around you. So listen and try to understand. And then it was quiet, and the people listened. Have you heard it? Have you heard the voice of the Great Spirit in thunder, in rushing water, in the blowing wind, in the song of birds? Do you hear that still small voice in your own breathing? In the beating of your heart? Listen and try to understand. And please join us in the song of dedication.
Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind and fellowship. Thus do we covenant with each other. Thus do we promise to each other.
Good morning. I'm Ginger White, a member of our Emerson Care Team. We're available with a listening ear to support you during challenging times. Contact us anytime through pastoralcare@emersonuu.org, and that's also in today's order of service. We encourage you to email us your joy or sorrow to be included in the upcoming Sunday service. At this time in our service, we pause to share personal joys and sorrows of our Emerson community. And after I share today's joys and sorrows, Reverend Deborah will light a candle. Each Sunday, we also light our Vigil Bowl candle. It represents the light of hope for peaceful resolution of conflicts on our planet, and it honors the dedicated people who serve us, especially on the front lines fighting COVID-19 and in efforts to stop racial injustice. Today, I share this concern. A concern for the migrants detained at Stewart and Irwin detention centers. Saturday, several Emersonians participated in a vigil, either in person or virtually, to commemorate the lives of the 3 men who recently died of COVID-19 while at Stewart Detention Center. We know there are joys and sorrows left unspoken, so please feel free to speak aloud the names of anyone you hold closely in your heart this morning. Now let us send our heartfelt intentions to people everywhere by offering the Buddhist prayer of loving kindness. The words are printed in your order of service. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May they be free from harm or suffering. May they be well in body, heart, and mind. May they be at peace. Blessed be.
Thank you, Ginger. This morning, our time of centering, I'm going to invite you to make it a time of silence, and also it's going to be a time of song. So the words will be up on your screen in a moment, but I'm going to ask you first to take this time to prepare yourself in whatever way that works for you, perhaps a few deep breaths. Maybe you haven't taken one of those really deep breaths yet this morning, so if that's the case, I invite you to do so. You could even stretch your arms. I know our hymn singers have been singing, but anybody else feels like stretching your arms, and inhale, and then exhale. So take this moment and take a breath. Allow yourself to feel a sense of centeredness. We'll sing our hymn one time through out loud, and then I'll invite you to just close your eyes after you sing the hymn and sit in silence and let the music wash over you.
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
I'm listening. I am listening. Spirit, speak to me. I'm listening. I am listening. Spirit, speak to me. My ears are wide open. My eyes are now open to see what I may be. I'm listening. I am listening. Spirit, speak to me. I'm listening. I am listening. In this moment of Spirit, speak to me. I can hear the voices of all my kin. I'm listening, singing. I am listening, tweeting and howling into the wind. My ears are wide open, oh, the joy. My eyes are wide open, oh, the love to see what for you and me. Oh, I'm listening in this moment of silence. I am listening. I hear Spirit speak through me.
Thank you. That was Leah Morris. What beautiful, beautiful song. And thank you for sharing in that meditation, everyone. The great Sufi poet Rumi has said, there is a voice that doesn't use words. Listen. There's a voice that doesn't use words. Listen. Okay, so let's admit it. We have all tried to find that voice on Google, haven't we? I've done it. You've done it. When we simply do not know what to do, we frantically and maybe even unconsciously type in the search box or call out, "Tell me what to do, Alexa." Siri, which job, which relationship, which project should I pursue? What is my future, Google? Wouldn't it be awesome? Wouldn't it be awesome if we had a GPS and we could just type in our desired destination, happiness, joy, love, and then press go, and step-by-step directions would pop up, guaranteeing us not only to get there, but tell us how long it will take. Wouldn't that be great? And if along the way there was an accident up ahead, it would reroute us to another direction, or at least give us a warning. There is a 10-minute delay to your happiness. Go ahead and check your email now. Of course, our rational brain knows that no AI technology, no matter how much we craft it in our image, will be able to answer those questions for us and direct us to true happiness and peace and joy. Although, to be fair, I have to admit that Siri did direct me to peace, love, and pizza when I first moved to Woodstock, so there's that. But in a way, we do have that GPS, don't we? We just don't have access through an app on our phone, at least not yet. The teacher, writer, and activist and Quaker Parker Palmer, in his book, A Hidden Wholeness, says, "We all have an inner teacher whose guidance is more reliable than anything we can get from a doctrine, ideology, collective belief system, institution, or leader." But the problem is we live in a world filled with those things, filled with doctrines, filled with ideology, filled with collective belief systems and institutions, all wanting our attention, all wanting to let us know what we should be doing, what we should be thinking, and even how we ought to feel. And if those aren't enough, there's our own internal distractions. I like to call it my monkey mind. There's this cartoon I saw. It shows a person driving their car down the road that leads into what appears to be the desert. And there's a large billboard beside the road, and the billboard says, "Next 200 miles, you and your own tedious thoughts." I've read that something like 95% of the thoughts we will think today were thoughts that we have thought yesterday and the day before and the day before. Very little new gets into the brain. Often these thoughts are filled with lots of woulda, shoulda, and couldas, with very little space in between. These voices, which are not so still and small, can actually be quite loud, can't they? And in an attempt to control the conversation, one of the participants in a recent debate, and I won't name names, lashed out over and over, interrupting, pushing his point, regardless of the relevance to the question. He could not wait his turn, but felt, I don't know, maybe fear that another voice would be heard. And so like a bee insisting on stinging, stinging, stinging the hand that it fears, he kept trying to sting and sting and sting with his words. Well, among many things about that scene that were quite disturbing to watch, a realization came to me as well as I watched, and that was that it really mirrors what we sometimes do to ourselves. Our ego mind, the one that carries the fear, can be like that relenting little stinging bee. Something inside us may say, I need some time to rest. And that stinging bee says, rest? You don't deserve rest. What have you done? You can't rest until the whole world is made just and whole. Or that quiet voice may say, this job is not good for my soul. And the little stinging bee retorts, you should feel lucky you have a job. The little small voice inside of us says, I did the best I could. Only to hear, oh, let me tell you all the things you shoulda and coulda done different. The bee mocks us again and again. Unfortunately, over time, the louder, more persistent voice can drone out that still small voice, so much so that we think that it may be gone, or we start to believe that it was never even there. So the imperative becomes how, in amongst this cacophony of noise in our world, both external and internal, begging for our attention, how can we hear our own true internal global positioning system? This guidance that is there all along. Well, today I decided to bring you a few stories, each one slightly different with an insight about answering this question. And if you join me later at Worship Reflections, you can let me know which ones resonated most with you. So this first story I'm going to share is one that was told by Swami Satchidananda. He's an Indian-born Hindu teacher of yoga in the West, and I really love this story. He says that there's a story of an indigenous American and his European American friend who are walking through the streets of Times Square in Midtown, New York during lunch hour. This was pre-COVID times, of course. It was very busy. The streets were filled with people. Cars were honking their horns. Taxi cabs were squealing around the corners. Sirens were wailing. And the sounds of the city were just all around them. And then suddenly, the indigenous man said, I hear a cricket. And his friend replied, very shocked, what? No way. There's no way. You couldn't possibly hear a cricket over all this sound. No, I'm sure of it. The First Nation man said, I hear a cricket. That's impossible, his friend insisted. So the man listened carefully for a moment and then walked across the street to a big planter filled with shrubs, and he looked under the branches, and there indeed he found a small cricket. And his friend was utterly amazed. That's incredible. You must have superhuman ears, he said. No, the First Nation man said, my ears are no different from yours, but it depends on what you're listening for. But that can't be, said the friend. I could never hear a cricket in this noise. Yes, that's true, came the reply, because it depends on what is really important to you. Here, let me show you. And he reached into his pocket and pulled out a few coins and discreetly dropped them on the sidewalk. Plink, plink, plink. And then the noise of the crowd, through the noise of the crowd still blaring in their ears, they noticed how every head within 20 feet turned to look toward the sound of the coins hitting the sidewalk. "See what I mean?" said the First Nation man. "It all depends on what is important to you." I love this story because it reminds me to practice listening for what is important to me. Connecting this inner guidance system is important to me, and the story reminds me to notice, am I hearing it, or am I listening to so many other things in my world? We find the still small voice in our desire to hear it. The second story comes from the Hebrew and Christian scriptures and tells what happened when Elijah went to the mountain to hear the voice he called God. In the story in 1 Kings, Elijah's in a cave, hiding from some enemies and waiting for the word of God to guide him. And then the scripture says this: "A great and strong wind rent the mountains and broke in pieces the rocks. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice." And that was the voice of God that Elijah recognized. Now, I read these verses as a message that though things will happen in life, though the winds will blow us here and there, and life's emotional earthquakes will shake us at our foundations, and the fires of life will scorch us and bring fear and stress, that if we are patient, the still small voice of God or of Spirit, of our truest self, will find us. And in that we can take refuge. I feel like this message is a comforting one, especially in those times when that wind and the fire and the quaking earth rattle me. It reminds me to be patient, to center, and to listen for that still small voice. I just need a little bravery sometimes to get through those rough patches. And the storm will die down, and that voice will be there. So we can find our still small voice in our bravery and in our patience. And the third story I want to share with you this morning is one that has some similarities to the last with an important twist at the end. And this is the story of Buddha's enlightenment. And you'll notice how I like to pick stories from different traditions. It's very much part of our Unitarian Universalist faith to look at the wisdom from multiple traditions. And I love to pick a topic and then see what stories there are in many traditions and how they have similarities in their messages. So this is the story from the Buddhist tradition of Buddha's enlightenment. Now, the person that came to be known as Buddha was actually born Siddhartha Gautama. And the story of Buddha, it's long, and there's actually many different versions of it, so here's the one that I'm going to recount this morning. I'm going to cut right to the part where he's meditating under a tree and on the verge of his enlightenment. So the about-to-be Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, he sits under the tree, and the demon Mara comes to him. Now, Mara, being a demon, is determined to keep Buddha from becoming enlightened by trying to distract him from his meditation. So there sits Buddha. He's meditating on the verge of enlightenment, and Mara's like, okay, I'm going to throw all kinds of distractions at him. So first, Mara brings women. And now, disclosure, for the sake of time, I'm not going to unpack the misogyny and heteronormality in that, but we're just going to move on. We'll do that in another sermon. But let's just say that in the story, this is meant to represent the temptations of the body, whatever they happen to be for you. But Siddhartha is not tempted and remains in meditation. And then Mara sends this vast army of monsters to attack him, these symbolizing the temptation to fear. And yet Siddhartha sits still and untouched by the fear. And then Mara tries to guilt and shame Siddhartha by telling him that he failed his family and society by leaving them and by not doing his duty. Guilt and shame are probably ones Mara would get me off my meditation for. What about you? But yet, Siddhartha remains in meditation. And then Mara does one other thing. Mara begins to mock Siddhartha and tells him his work is for nothing, as there is no one here to recognize what you are doing. Buddha was there alone. So Siddhartha, soon to be Buddha, responds with this brilliant move. So Siddhartha takes one finger and touches the earth, symbolizing that the earth will bear witness. And the earth rises up and says, I bear witness to you. And in that instant, Mara disappears. And the story says that in the morning, the stars rise in the sky, and Siddhartha realizes his enlightenment and becomes a Buddha. I think about this story when I'm alone. And I often go to the woods when I'm alone and worried about something. It's kind of like my place to go. And I often sit down when I'm feeling shaken in that time, and I put my hand on the earth, and I can hear the witnessing of the earth witnessing my pain or my struggle or whatever is going on in my life. And I think of this moment in the Buddha's life, that moment where the earth rises and says, I witness you. It speaks to the power of the still small voice that is always there and reminds us that we are not alone, that we can find this still small voice in our aloneness. Now, the last story I'm going to share with you this morning is my own. I will do my best to do it without a tissue in my hand. In 2013, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And in a search for a cure, I decided to go to an Ayurvedic hospital in southern India for treatment. Now, Ayurveda is a traditional medicine of India, and it's a particular kind of treatment that I was given. Let's just say it wasn't fun. It included all kinds of very difficult processes that were designed to cleanse the body top to bottom, if you get my drift. And at the time, the storms of my life were really whipping me around. In addition to fear of death and concern for my children, I was in a career that I knew had run its course. I had recently gotten remarried and moved to a place that had not yet felt like home. And I was struggling financially to support my children through college as a single mother. And most days in India, I felt pretty ill and pretty weak, but I managed to maintain a consistent hour-long morning meditation practice. And 3 weeks into my treatment, when frankly I was struggling and thinking about giving up, I actually had researched some nearby spas, thinking I was going to bail on the hospital and just go sit at a spa for a couple weeks. But I decided to stay. And so I got up that morning and did my morning meditation as normal. And it was an uneventful meditation. I breathed and focused and drawing my attention inward. And then it was right at the end, as I began to open my eyes and come out of meditation, I heard a very clear voice. It was as clear as any human voice I have ever heard. And it said simply, "It's time." Now, the thing you may have noticed about that still small voice when you have heard it, there is no mistaking it. And there's no question about what it means. Have you had those moments where that voice was so clear and you didn't need to know the details, you didn't need to know the step-by-step directions, but you knew. You knew what to do next. And the voice that day didn't give me any step-by-step directions, and I actually had no idea how to proceed. And yet I knew without an ounce of doubt in me on that day that it was time for me to become a minister. At the time, I didn't know how to go about it, but just like the GPS displays the next direction and the next, I felt like this still small voice carried me through the process, just letting me know the next piece and the next piece, not showing me the end piece at all. It took me to places that at the time when I heard the voice, I didn't even know existed. And it brought me here to Georgia and to Emerson. We find that still small voice in our trust with this guidance. If in that moment I had pushed those words aside, I wouldn't be standing here today and my life would have taken a very different turn. But I trusted those words. As a matter of fact, I think I couldn't not. It was those kind of voice that there was no doubt of what I needed to do. The external noises of our world and the internal chatter of our minds, they're going to continue. Trust me, we all know that. No matter how much we meditate, the monkey mind is going to come out and give us some chatter. And no matter how much we turn off the news or avoid reading the daily briefings, we're going to hear about the chatter outside in our world. But if we truly desire to hear God, to hear Spirit, to hear our truest self, and if we are patient, and if we are a little brave in the face of hardship, and if we can recognize that we are never alone, and we can trust our experience, that still and small voice will be the only guidance system we will ever really need. So may you listen deeply to that voice that doesn't use words, and may you feel comforted by its guidance. Please join us now as we sing our closing hymn. It's called Find a Stillness. Blessed be.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
We hope that you feel nurtured in heart and mind by our time together. We invite you to conclude the service with one final act. As you are able, please affirm your support for the sustainability of this congregation and the ongoing ministries that benefit us all through a monetary offering. When we give, we say yes to something we value, and it is our sincere hope that you have found great value here today. We hope also that you will return again and again to this community as we work toward positive change in the world. To make a contribution, text the word pledge or gift to 678-553-9485. There's also a donation button on our website, emersonuu.org. Please refer to the information on your screen and take a moment now to give. Thank you for all you do to make Emerson a cherished and beloved community.
I leave you this morning with these words from Mark Napo. Still yourself and listen, and soon in time the mystery will begin to speak to you through its thousands disguises as life on earth. May you go forward from this day listening deeply to yourself and trusting the guidance that you find there. Blessed be.
Please join me in the congregational response as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.
Please go now in peace and take peace wherever you go. Hit it, Bruce.